friends, today I will be giving my interview on intermediate to advanced level interview questions on batch epics to Gyaneshwar Malwa. So before starting, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, so please subscribe to SFDC Amplified. Hi Gyan,
Hello, Smriti. How are you doing today?
doing good? Thank you for taking out the time to take my interview.
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate your efforts as well on preparing for the interview sessions and uh, creating a great blog as well as the YouTube your channel SFDC Amplified. Thank you. So today we'll be going ahead with the intermediate to advanced level interview questions on the batch apex. So I can just go ahead with the questions. I can. So are you prepared? Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So this is the first question. What is Apex Flex Queue?
So basically, the Apex Flex queue enables us to submit up to 100 batch jobs for the execution, and any job which we are submitting for execution are in the holding status, and they are placed in the Apex Flex queue. And as I said, that up to 100 batch jobs can be in the holding status.
Right. So it's just as the name suggests, it's a queue which helps us to submit like 100 batch jobs for execution. Yeah. Thank you. That was correct. And I'll go for the next question. Can you change the order of a job in Apex Flex Queue?
So this is very interesting question, that we can change the order of job in the Apex Flex queue. So jobs are processed generally in first in first out in order in which they are submitted. But if we want, we can take the look at the current queue and do the shuffling of the queue. So we can move an important job into front and less important to the back. So that's how it works.
Very good. Thank you. Yes. But the rule it follows is FIFO, first in, first out. And then we can even shuffle the queue. Thank you. Like you said, go for the next question. And yeah, like if we want to see the if it is successful or not, we can use system class, and we can call the methods in the system class flex queue and move before job. So the next question is how many batch job can run concurrently?
So basically, the system can process up to 5 queued or active jobs simultaneously for any organization.
Yes, that's correct. I think you remember like we have done this in the batch apex as well, right? We
Correct.
have come, so this is very important. The next question is explain status of jobs in the apex flex queue.
So there are multiple status. So there is holding, then queued, prepared, processing, aborted, completed, and failed. So can you just show the answers? And we
Yes.
can. So if you see about the holding, job can be submitted and is held in the Apex Flex queue under the until the resources become available.
And in the queue, the job is, as the name suggests, it's in the awaiting execution. It will be waiting in the queue. And then preparing the start method of the job has been invoked. It has been invoked. However, this status can last few minutes depending on the size of the batch of the records. So that means it is preparing still. Processing job is being processed. Once it is processed, that's the status. Aborted job aborted by the user. If we have halt the job, if we have ended the job. Completed once the job completes with or without failures. And failed is like if there are any errors in the job status. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Smriti. So the next question is, let's say I have a 150 bad jobs to execute, and then will I be able to queue them in one go at one time?
So it's a very interesting question. It's like a scenario based question. So we have just learned that what is Apex Flex queue, and it can have maximum of 100 jobs. So now it says that I have 150 batch jobs to execute. Will I be able to queue? So of course no, you will not be able to queue because the limit is 100. So database.execute batch will throw an error, that is a limit exception, and it will not add the jobs to a queue because it's almost 100. It's at most 100. And this is when the Apex Flex queue is enabled. That time the limit is 100. But if the Apex Flex queue is not enabled in the org, then the concurrent limit is 5. That is what we need to remember. So we can never have 150 batch jobs to execute concurrently.
Correct. Yes. The maximum is 100 jobs. Next question. Can I use for update in the software query using the database.query locator?
So again, this is a very important question, and it's from intermediate to advanced level batch interview question. So the answer is no, we cannot. It will throw an exception stating that the lock is implied for each batch execution, and therefore for update should not be specified.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Can I query related records using database.query locator?
So yes, you can do a subquery for related records. For example, you want to fetch the contacts as well. So yes, you can do subquery, but that a better strategy will be to subquery separately so that it is running faster.
Yes, correct. So the next question is, can you write a batch class blueprint?
So yes, for sure. You can show the answer.
Yes, can you? Yeah, okay. I'll just show the answer and let you can explain us.
So let's see. So first of all, we have the batch class with the name batch example, and it implements database.batchable. So database.batchable is nothing but the interface, and it has three methods: start, execute, and finish. Now, once we talk about the start, it is the first method in the batch. Now, it is having either we use the database.query locator or iteratable. So, depending on what we are using. So, we will be discussing that in more detail later. Now, when we are talking about the start method, you see that there is something called database.batchable context. So, what is that? This means that once the it gives us the job ID for monitoring. So in the start method, we collect the batch of records through the query locator or iterable. Then in the execute method, we pass the records which we have collected in the start, and we do the processing. And finally, when we go to the finish method, we execute the post processing operations like sending the email to the user. So this is a complete blueprint of the.
Thank you. So for the next question, let's say a record A has to be processed before record B, but record B came in the first batch and record A came in the second batch. The batch picks records which are unprocessed every time it runs. How will you control the processing order?
So the first point to note is that processing order cannot be controlled. But we can bypass the record processing before recording because that is our objective. So to understand the question, we have to process record A before record B. But record B came first. So what we can do? We can implement database.stateful, and then in because of that we can check that record A has been processed or not. And if it is not processed and record B has come, then don't process record B. Means that only process record B after record A has been processed. And this we can use using the database.stateful. So that's how exactly it works.
Yes.
So you can see in the answer.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can see in the answer that we cannot process the processing order cannot be controlled. But we can use database.stateful just to see that record A has been processed or not, and based on that we are processing the record B, and only after the record A has been processed we will be running for the record B.
Yes. So database class is very helpful here in this scenario. Thank you. So the next question, let's say we have run an Apex batch to process 1000 records and it is running with a batch size of 200. Now while doing DML on 395th record, an error occurred. What will happen in that case?
So again, a good question, and it's like a scenario based question. But what we need to remember is that it again focuses on the basic concepts which we have read. So the batch size is 200. So now what happens? It it is taking the particular batch in a separate transaction. So if the first transaction succeeds, but the second fails, the database updates the first transaction and does not roll back. It will roll back the second transaction. So since the batch size of 200 is the first batch, so it will be completely processed and there will be no problem and it will be committed to the database. Now in second batch, we have problem with the 395th record. So again what will happen? Record 200 to 400 will not be processed. But before that record will get processed. So you can see here that there are two separate transactions. The first transaction with having 200 records will get processed, but like records from 200 to 400 will not get processed because there is an error in 395th record.
Correct. Thank you. I'll go for the next question. How can you stop a bad job?
So database.execute batch and system.schedule batch methods return ID and which can be used in system.abort job method.
Thank you. We'll go for the next question. Give example of iterable.
Okay, so let's discuss the answer.
Sure.
Can you go back? Okay, so if you see here, there is a class.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can see here there's a class my test which implements iterable. So what we are doing is we are here the main point is when we are using global iterable in the start method, we are returning a new class called my iterable class. So my iterable class will be having the custom logic which we are using to get the records which we want to do, and then we will be passing it to the execute method. So that's how we do that. In the start we put return new and then the class name, and that particular class will be having the custom logic. So it's a sample blueprint of iterable method.
Next question. How to create an Apex class to invoke the batch Apex job?
Okay, so let's discuss using, again we will be seeing the code and discuss how it works. So if you can see here, we have a class named test my batch, and main point here to notice that we have created an instance of the class called customer batch. The instance of the class is my batch. How we have created instance? Make using the new keyword. Now we have used database.execute batch to execute that particular batch. So what is the instance name? That is my batch. And we want it should be having like 400 records at each time. So we have passed that. We can have 2000 and by default it's 200 records. So it will be in the batch of 400 which we have passed right now. And after that, we will be getting an ID. So we are printing the ID using the system.debug statement. So that's how through the class we can invoke the batch apex job by using the database.execute batch.
Correct. Thank you. So the next question is how to use aggregate queries in the batch apex.
Okay, so this is little complicated question. Try to go through it one more time just to have a better learning. So aggregate query, the thing is that it does not work in batch apex because aggregate query does not support the query more. So they will give some type of exception. So to fix that error, we should create an apex class which implements iterator, second class which implements iteratable, and the third to implementing the database batchable, and which uses the iterable at the start execution in the batch apex. So can you please show?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, aggregate query will not work in the batch apex, right?
Yeah,
Because
correct.
as it doesn't support query more method. Okay, cool. Go for the next question. What is the difference between database.batchable and database.batchable context?
So till now, whatever code we have seen, hopefully you would have got an idea. But still, database.batchable is an interface which has three methods: the start, execute, and finish. And database.batchable context is a context variable which stores the runtime information like job ID, which we can use to monitor our batch.
Correct. Thank you. The next question is which platform event can fire from batch?
So for this question, I can definitely say it's like an advanced level question, not very common, but something good to know. So there is something called the batch apex error event object, which represents a platform event associated with the batch apex. So we use that for we are when we wanting any error or exception occurs. So for that we can use this particular object, and we have to use the interface database the raises platform event in order to fire this platform event. So by seeing the answer, you will get more clarity.
Yes.
So as you can see that there is something called batch apex error event object, which represents a platform event associated with the batch apex class. And we have to use the interface called databases dot raise platform events. And it helps whenever any error occurs. So we are able to find that error quickly because of this particular platform event. That is the use of it.
Yes. Thank you.
And if you see here, um, we will be able to use the database raises platform event uh, so that we are able to use that platform event.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we can go next.
Yes. What if you change the name of execute method to execute one in the batch class? Will the batch job still run?
So this is a very good question, and interviewer will be able to judge that whether we have practiced or not with this example. So again, because this is a method which is in the which we cannot change, so if you try to change, then you will be getting an error. So it won't let you save the batch class, as it will say that the class must implement the execute method.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Can see here what errors it gives. and we won't be able to save it. So we'll go for the next question. Thank you. We have to create three account records, one with missing required information, with no information. Once the code is executed, will all the three records get saved to the database? And if there is any record which is not saved, then we have to print an error.
So let's understand the question first, and then I will be explaining the answer. And Gyan, then you also please help me so that we can explain it nicely, because it is very important question and it is having a lot of information which we can learn. So if we are talking about the question, so they are saying that we have to create three account records, and one is missing the main required information. So we'll be able to save all the three records? Of course not. If we are, for example, the name which is needed in the account, we are not putting that. So it throws error, right? Whenever you do in the UI. Same goes when you are saving it through the code. So it will not let us see. And then the next question is, if there is any record which is not saved, then print error. So definitely we can print that. Now let's see how we do that. Okay, okay, yes. So let's understand this. So we create a list of account, and in that we are passing three accounts as they said. So the first account is having the account one name, which is the mandatory field. The second one is not having the required name, and the third one is having account 3. So you see that the second account is having the missing information. Now we use the database.save result for inserting the records, like the account 1, account 2, account 3. Basically it will be in the accounts. For that we are using that. Now what false indicates is that if we put the false, means if a single record fails, then it will only that record will fail, but other will still get saved to the database. That is the impact of the false in the database dot insert. Now it trades over the database dot save results and says if it is success, then what you do, then get the IDs, and it will be printing the ID. Can you go to the next slide please? And now if there are errors, so what it does, it iterates over the database dot error, and it prints what it prints the status code and the message. I think the message will be that the required field is missing. So this is how we are able to generate the error, and as well as we can get the job ID of the records which are being working. So Gyan, do you want to give some more explanation to it? Please go ahead.
So just a minute.
You can go just line by line.
Yeah. So in the first, like we can see here, we have the list which is of type accounts, and within that we are creating three new account records. One, the middle one, new account is just with no information, and the next thing what we are doing, we are using the database class. So database.insert, we are using the insert method in the database class to add the list of accounts which we have created in the first four lines. And the false, it gives us the if it fails the insertion. So the next thing is it will save in a save result string. That is, it will save in the SR variable, and then we will iterate through all the records in that list records, and then it is checking like is success. That method checks if the account is successfully created. If it has created, then it returns the, we are taking the sr dot get id, so it gives us the id in the debug statement. If not, we are, what we are doing in the else statement is we are checking for the error if there is any insertion is failed for that account. And we are in the last part one, In that debug statement, we are getting the error message. So that's how it is. So database method is very important. Make sure in this kind of situations, whenever we want to print result while doing the DML operations, if there are any errors. Thank you. I'll go for the next question. Is there a way in which I can call a future method from a batch job?
So yes, it is a very important question. Why? Because we read that okay, we cannot call future method from batch job. So answer will be no, we cannot call a future method from batch job. But then interviewer will say no, but I want to call future method from batch job, and give me a way in which I can call. So the answer will be that calling a future method is not allowed in the execute method. But a web service can be called in the batch, and a web service can also call up future method. So what we can do is we can define a web service having the future method and then call the web service from the execute method of batch job. So can you show the answer again and we can explain more nicely? So if you see here,
Sorry, go ahead.
so if you see here that we can call web service from the batch, and then the web service itself can have the feature method. This way we can call feature method from the batch job, not directly but using the help of web services callout.
Thank you. Go for the next question. What is the upper limit of a scope parameter if batch class returns iterable?
So if the start method of batch class returns an iterable, the scope parameter value has no upper limit.
Correct. Because if you run like it'll run into like Garner limits if you use the higher number. That's correct. The next question is, can you explain the example of batch apex class for deleting records?
Yes. So here again it's a scenario based question and again an advanced level question. So let's see that how we can do that. So basically what we use is we just use the delete scope and then we use the database to empty recycle bin to basically delete it from the recycle bin. Let's see the code just to get a better idea.
Sure.
So
Sorry. Just give me a minute. Go ahead.
okay, so if you see here, there is database.batchable interface, and then we have used start method, execute method, and then there will be a finish method. Now, yes, that's right. Now, what we will do in the start method, we will be using the database.getQueryLocator and the get the query, whatever query we need. Now, in the execute, we will be passing that particular query. Now, we will be doing delete scope, and then we will be using database to empty recycle bin to basically remove it from the recycle bin, and that's how we will be able to delete the records for the batch epics.
Yes. Mhm. And the next and the last question for today is how to count the customer direct account records in the batch class.
Okay, so now here something interesting is there. We if we have to count a total, so we should use the database dot stateful. So generally, so by default, it is stateless in nature, so it does not keep the count of separate transactions. But with the database.stateful, we are able to calculate the count of the customer direct accounts. So to understand the question, there is an account with type customer direct, and we have to count them. So how can we do that? So when we have to count, we will be using the database.stateful to do the count. So just let's see a sample code to understand it more clearly. Yes, just go till the finish one. Yes, that should be fine. So now if we understand again, the first line if you see, we are using database.batchable interface, and we are also using database.stateful. Now we are using database.stateful. Now we are like right now we have created an integer name number of direct customers and we have put as 0. Now we will be using start, execute and finish methods. In the start again what we do? We are using database.query locator. We can either use iterable or database.query locator. Here we are using query locator because we want to query the records. So we are just wanting to query the accounts. So we can simply write the query. If we were not able to bring the query, then we have to use iterable for custom logic. So we write the query here and return the query. Once we return the query, we pass it to the execute method. Now in the execute method, we iterate over the accounts and we see if the account type equals to the customer direct type basically, then what you do, number of direct count customer plus plus means keep on increasing. So every time it goes through the iteration, it will keep on increasing the number to the number of customer type, whenever it is whenever account is type is equal to number of direct customer direct, so it will keep on increasing and finally it will go to the finish. So basically whenever we have to keep the count, we can use the database.stateful.
Thank you very much. And that's all I had the questions for you today. And I really appreciate your time and all the support and help the Trailblazer community, Salesforce.
Friends, I will be really encouraging you to go ahead and see all the interview questions today we have discussed. It's from intermediate to advanced level for batch epics. But before that, I have put the basic interview questions for batch epics in the channel. So first see that and then go through these questions as well, and put comments if you have any doubts or any feedback, and that is very appreciated. Also, if you like the video, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon for future notifications.
Thank you all. Thank you, Study. Bye.